Hi from Legaleech. Dear students and law graduates and lawyers alike, today we have Advocate Sumit Mehta with us, who has more than 2 years of litigation experience in various courts. So, let's just begin with sir. We are so happy, sir, to have you with us today. And I hope your insights would really help our audience to understand legal profession and law field as such. So, sir, can you tell us a bit about your background and your journey in becoming a lawyer?
Okay, right. I was basically into marketing. I was a marketing consultant, and I was also into legal drafting. Since I was into this content development in the marketing field, I was also into the legal drafting. Then post COVID gave me an opportunity to delve deep into law. So, I mean, I had a lot of books that I had scanned during my college, LLB college. So, most of the books I had scanned with my CAM scanner app. So, I had most of the books CRPC, CPC, Transfer of Property Act by Shukla, CRPC by Khelkar. So, I had all the books with me. So, when I didn't have anything to do because primarily I was into education sector in marketing, and so everything was closed at that point of time, and I was also collaborating with some big names in education sector. But because of the COVID, everything changed, the scenario changed. Basically, COVID gave me an opportunity to sort of know more about law, and there are a lot of platforms that organize a lot of seminars wherein judges, ex-judges, and a lot of eminent lawyers with say about 40 years of experience. So they basically talked about certain different topics. Just to give you overview, there's a channel called Beyond Law CLC. So they organize seminars by different eminent people. So there I got to know the finer nuances of the different aspects. Now, for example, Justice Ram Kumar, he's an authority in CRPC. So if you really want to learn CRPC, then you should see the lectures. So his lectures are on live law also. So he's been very active in live law. Plus, he also has conducted a lot many webinars during this COVID time and post COVID also. And so it related to bail, related to different procedures in CRPC, related to taking cognizance, related to filing private complaints, related to different sort of case studies. And the best part about him is that he basically uh, frames questions and answers those questions. For example, there are how many ways are there for taking cognizance, right? So then he explains, and then he gives case laws. So that kind of helps in learning those things very fast. And since I was racing against time, because I joined this profession very late in my life, so those lectures, I mean, kind of helped me into having a understanding into different concepts of law. And in fact, there were other eminent lawyers who are authority in say civil. So there is this Shangar Murli, and who is an authority in civil. I mean, he's somebody who you can just look up to. He's so good. So I listened to his lectures on execution and different other aspects on framing of issues under order 14. So this is kind of I learned from these eminent people, and they I call them my gurus. So basically, YouTube is have been kind of my learning ground, because I've not worked under anybody. So obviously, I needed people to guide me, and it is through them that I've been able to get whatever I could get. So my that has been my journey. I mean, since I came, as I mentioned, since I came late into this profession, so I had to put in a lot of efforts in knowing about those. And since I was into litigation, so litigation means that you should know the law before you can go to the courts, right? So there are very small things. For example, if you have filed a say injunction suit, right, then you have to accompany it with order to rule 3 application, which is order to rule 2 bars a further, because if you have not claimed any of the reliefs you pertaining to that cause of action, then you are barred in filing another suit. So these kind of the aspects I got to know from these eminent people. So that has been my journey. It's been very hectic. I've been on my toes for last 3 4 years now. So that's have been my basically my journey into this legal profession.
So you are certainly an inspiration for everyone who want to study law and become lawyers. Uh, in their mid uh, time of the life. So you are actually an inspiration because you are a self learner, as you said. Uh, आपने बहुत सारे लेक्चर्स देखे, मैनी मल्टीपल रिसोर्सेज से आपने नॉलेज ग्रास्प करने की कोशिश करी, लर्न करने की कोशिश करी, because many times we require a mentor, we require a guide in this
Absolutely,
field to uh,
absolutely
to
right.
to at least show us the procedure which needs to be followed in court. uh,
Absolutely, you're absolutely right.
you are one example whereby you made them uh, your mentor. You took
Yes.
guidance indirectly, so it's just wonderful knowing that. So sir, what advice would you like to give to law students in current scenario?
The first advice I would like to give is that go to the courts and argue, because I've seen those juniors not going to the courts, because I have been into different courts, though not directly also, I mean as a passive listener also. So I realized that many of those juniors are not taking the opportunity of speaking in front of the judge. I think breaking the ice is very important. Otherwise, that will protract their sort of legal journey, because the more time they take into going to the courts directly and arguing on a particular point, so it need not necessarily be into say something which is very important. And I've seen that judges also kind of encourage, and they say that if they tell the juniors that if you argue, then I'm going to give you a shorter date. I've seen in high courts also. So that is what one thing I realized, that the juniors should take more opportunities in going to the courts and arguing on say small points initially. Even when they're going as proxy counsels, they should at least study the cases, right, and then go. Because see, the normal perception is when you go as proxy counsel, because initially I also went to different sort of matters as proxy counsel, and there was this perception in judges that a proxy counsel, I mean, he or she might not have studied the case. So I think which is important, that even if they are going as proxy counsel, cutting a soaring figure doesn't help. So at least be well versed with the facts of the case, and you can always tell the judge that as an officer of the court, I can, and since I know about the facts and I'm conversant with the facts, I can help the court in sort of updating about apprising about certain situations. So that is one advice I would like to give. And the second is study as many judgments as possible. So make sure that you whenever there is time, you sit and study some of the judgments, because I've realized that many of the aspects have been dealt elaborately in the judgments. For example, 156, they had a matter in 156.3. So I took out all the judgment, or most of the judgments rather, and I tried to sort of study those judgments. And the preposition of law had been dealt elaborately in those judgments. And so basically, it helped in having an understanding. Same is the case with 65B certificate. There is a lot of confusion surrounding this 65B certificate. And there are a lot of good lectures also. The authority in this 65B is Advocate Nipanai. She's an authority. She's written books. Then this Advocate Yuvraj, he's also an authority. He has written a book also. So this is how you can gather whatever information, or whatever sort of point of law that you can get by studying those judgments, and also sort of seeing those lectures they mentioned. So when you get that confidence that you know the law, then I don't think so it will be a problem going before a judge and saying something. At least not being quiet and saying that okay, my senior is not available. At least helping the court in taking things forward, rather than stalling proceedings, that the senior counsel is not available or the counsel is not available. So that is what I could gather in this.
But sir, don't you think that it is not fault of juniors? Many a times seniors don't want them to argue. Many times they are not even
Yes.
given the files to study. So actually,
Absolutely.
they have little or no option left, but rather to, stick with that law firm or stick with that a lawyer, because it's their initial years.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
right, sir. So what to do in such a manner where we are
You can always
stuck?
ask for the file. Now, for example, what I used to do was, when I went to say to work with a sort of senior advocate, won't name him. So I always used to insist on the file. I said, क्या होगा file लेके? मैंने कहा नहीं सर मुझे facts तो पढ़ने हैं. At least it will help me because since I am in the process of learning things, वो मोटी file पढ़ना में, if you can read that file in 10 minutes, that is also a challenge. Reading a file quickly, because since I come from an education background, so that is also very important. So now I can take a file and say within first 10 minutes I can briefly scan through the facts. So when you start doing this, then you realize that you already know the facts and you can say things that the judge asks, because it might not be about a particular point of law that you are arguing, right? Might be he asks you about a certain facts. So at least you get to know about the facts. So whatever you can do is that whenever your senior asks you, sir कोई बात नहीं मैं तो कभी कुछ बोलूंगा नहीं, लेकिन at least आप फाइल दे दीजिए सर, मैं फाइल पढ़ना चाहूंगा इसकी, so that I also, so then take a blank piece of paper and try to note down the facts of the cases. Some of the facts are so interesting, and that it's always kind of a suspense thriller or something that you're reading, because it's so sometimes so interesting. So that is how you can do it, because once you get confidence with the facts, then you yourself will say सर कोई बात नहीं फिर आप नहीं है तो मैं एटलीस्ट इस पॉइंट पे बोल दूंगा. And judges encourage. Now what judges know that he's a junior counsel, so they wouldn't pass a adverse order. लेकिन एटलीस्ट वो जो जर्नी है दैट विल बिकम वर्थवाइल. Otherwise, you'll be confined to just doing research about something. And whenever you do a research, make sure that you read a judgment, or at least the relevant portion of the judgment. And when you start reading those files, it helps you basically reading fast. So now when you read a judgment, you get to know that कि अच्छा इस portion में this is the main portion, the preposition of law has been discussed in this portion, and so you can quickly go through it. And that's how you basically add value to whatever you sort of are currently into. So this is what I suggested. Whenever चाहे आपको कुछ भी लिए डेट लेने के लिए भी भेजो, at least make sure that you take out the file and read the facts of the case. So that is what I sort of suggest, that I would like to suggest my sort of colleagues and juniors.
Yes, sir, very well said. We should actually insist for file reading. We should actually request our seniors, our colleagues, so that at least we should be aware of the facts. Getting
Absolutely.
aware of the facts is very important. So,
As it is
without
said,
any,
the devil and the God lies in the details. The other day I was listening to the interview of Manu Singhvi. So he said, advocate, senior advocate. So he said, the devil and the God lies in the details. So details are the facts. The position of law, I mean, obviously the judge also understands. So if you are able to put across the facts, I think half your job is done. Because in any case, for arguing on a point of law, you need to have a preparation for that. So not everybody can go to that level. तो जो छोटा छोटा चीज़ है, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल दिस आस्क कि अच्छा कब हुआ था, सर ये फलानी डेट को हुआ था. सो द जज दैट विल इंस्पायर कॉन्फिडेंस इन द जज आल्सो, दैट ही इज पुटिंग इन एफर्ट्स. अभी क्या होता है, मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स जूनियर्स put in a sorry figure, or they cut a sorry figure. So that is what I realized from my little experience that I've had.
without breaching any client confidentiality, can you share some of your most challenging or memorable cases or matter? You can just talk about some of the facts and how it was tricky and challenging for you and how you overcame it, without telling the name and without actually disclosing anything.
There are a lot of challenging cases. One was basically, as I mentioned, that I'm handling an appeal, in a NI Act case, right? So this person has been convicted. So I was not the main lawyer. Basically, the lawyer, this person's lawyer, wife is also a lawyer. So now she is arguing the case. So she basically asked me to help her out. This was the most challenging case because what happened was he was kind of betrayed by the legal profession only. Now why I say this is because mediation maybe, and it was he was up against a reputed company. I'll not name that company. So he was up against a reputed company, and तो mediation वगैरह हुआ. So mediation was done very hurriedly. So वहाँ पे भी he had accepted the liability because there was some recovery suit and all, sorry, check bounce cases and recovery suit, both were going simultaneously. And the problem in this case was that he had written a letter to the company taking that liability. So he's written it was basically a family business, right? And he was also a part of that family business, though his share was very less in that business, right? But I don't know what transpired and what happened. Somehow he was basically handling this client, right? And he, through this letter, took up the liability of that company. So the company is a different entity from this guy, right? And he sort of started his own proprietorship firm. Now he gave the checks from this proprietorship firm, right? Now the thing was that as you know that 118 NI talks about consideration, presumption of consideration. 139 talks about for any other liability also. That's how this has been interpreted. Now the biggest problem here was based on this letter which he has given, purportedly given, because obviously he was forced to sign that letter, right? But so based on that, his liability is being fixed. Right now, the problem there is this is a purely commercial transaction. Now, in the recent judgments, if you see, the Supreme Court in a lot of the matters have seen that even for husband, if wife is issuing the check, right? So the Supreme Court has interpreted as if even if it is for somebody else, for any other liability in 139, means for any other liability also. But here, the interesting fact is this is a purely commercial transaction, right? So consideration is also an important aspect here. In commercial transaction, as per section 25 of the Contract Act, consideration is one of the very important things, because something in return. Now, I was arguing on the point that what is the consideration that this guy got based on that letter. Now, the other aspect that I was arguing is that you can only take up a liability through a bilateral document. By that I mean that अगर मुझे किसी की liability लेनी है company की, so it has to be a bi-party between the me and the company. So I cannot take a 400 crores liability of Reliance just because I'm working in Reliance, right? So those are the technical issues, and it was very hard to convince the judge. I mean, now also, and I've been arguing emphatically on the point that consideration is also important, because if consideration is not taken into account, that might as well have been removed from the statute. From the statute, why there is a presumption of 118? Now courts basically based on those judgments which are there, जैसे कि अगर आप किसी और भी liability के लिए है तो आप checks issue कर सकते हो. So those were the contentious points of law which was very difficult. I'm still arguing it, and I don't know where it will lead to, but that was very challenging because it's very hard to convince the judge that that there is this consideration also, because this consideration concept has been diluted by Supreme Court. क्योंकि जनरली, और मैंने देन आई डिफरेंशिएटेड दोस केसेस आल्सो, क्योंकि जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट के भी रीसेंट जजमेंट्स आए हैं, जम्मू कश्मीर बैंक एंड अदर जजमेंट्स, दे बेसिकली पर्टेनिंग टू द बैंक, wherein these unscrupulous borrowers take the loan from the bank, and at the time of paying that they say कि नहीं पेमेंट किसी और ने किया है, check has been issued by my wife. So these transactions are different from a normal purely commercial transactions, right? In commercial transactions, consideration is important because profit is going to the company. What am I getting out of it? If even if I have issued the checks, what am I getting out of it, right? So it's very difficult, it's very challenging, and that's why I took up this challenge also, because uh, I mean, if I can put across my point, right? So it will be really sort of helpful in making the sort of court convinced about this preposition of law also. There are
Yes,
other
sir.
law, other cases also, but I think I'll stick to this one, which I still find it very challenging.
Yes, sir. So, how do you maintain work-life balance?
See, initially it's very difficult to maintain since I mentioned that I joined in late. It's very, very difficult for me to manage because every day I have to come and study something. Because वो कभी भी कुछ होता है ना तो so it's very difficult initially for me at least. For other people, enjoy your life and then take out say half an hour, study your judgment. They have a lot of time at hand. I don't have that much of time at hand. तो मेरे लिए थोड़ा सा difficult है. But other people, as they say, enjoy your life and when you're out of office and try to make the maximum use of your time in the office. While you're sitting, try to study some judgment so that you can go back home and enjoy, right? So that is how, and take up a hobby because I have also taken up my sketching and singing are my hobbies. When you take up a hobby, so that helps you into sort of releasing your sort of pent up so that is what I have been doing it since life have been a little hectic of late, especially after the COVID, because I was into a different field, then I took up this field, and so yeah, it's always a challenge for a lawyer. He has to be on his toes, so it's very challenging. But then if you have time at hand, make sure that you plan out your time in the way that for whatever time that you get, so you make sure that you study one topic. So say it is 156 today, तो उसको पढ़ लो. फिर अगर आपको 200 का प्राइवेट कंप्लेंट्स कैसे जाती हैं, so एक दिन उसको कर लो. So that's how you can always keep yourself updated with different aspects of law.
How do you deal with stress or burnout, if there is any, uh,
Yeah,
in your
stress.
life?
As I mentioned, for me, I think I've taken up some hobbies. One is sketching, and the other one is singing. So for me, I think those are the things that help me cope with stress. Sometimes it happens when you are especially going for, when there is an argument the next day, so it gets onto your nerves. तो वो तो थोड़ा सा रहता ही रहता है. But as जैसे कि over a period of time you start sort of taking it in a stride. तो इनिशियली तो यही चीजें होती हैं दैट हाँ, वन थिंग इज दैट फॉर सम टाइम एटलीस्ट फॉर 15 minutes just completely divert your mind into something else, even if it is a say important court case tomorrow. Say for 8 says for example from 8 to 8:15 I will not think about it. कुछ भी करेंगे, बात करेंगे, लेकिन मेरे को केस के बारे में नहीं, as if the case doesn't exist, and then you can come back to it. Taking such small breaks helps a lot, because otherwise if you take tensions or if you're anxious at a stretch, then it takes a toll on you and it sort of shakes your confidence also. It makes you more nervous. So that is for me are some of the stress busters.
सर, बहुत लॉ स्टूडेंट्स ये बोलते हैं कि वी आर फ्रॉम tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Level of exposure is quite less there, and apart from that, अगर हम नेशनल लॉ स्कूल से लॉ नहीं करते हैं तो we don't have such bright prospects, and litigation is all about toiling and struggling, so you can't make easy money in litigation. So sir, what is the advice? Is it a myth according to you? Because let's just
Absolutely, it's a
work.
myth.
Yes sir.
It's a myth. I say why, because see, everybody is equal when you stand in the court of law, right? Very few people know that I have very less experience, because when you're arguing, you basically argue on the facts of point of law, right? So I tell, I was into education, so I used to take classes also into communication. Say, if the teacher had not turned up or is absent, so I used to go there and take classes. So I used to tell them, communication is not just about English. Communication is about being able to put across your point, राइट. एंड आप अगर हिंदी में भी बोल रहे हैं और आप अगर कॉन्फिडेंटली बोल रहे हैं तो ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं यार, इट्स आवर नेशनल लैंग्वेज. when other countries can take pride in their own language, why can't we? So if I am not able to speak, I speak in Hindi. There's no problem. This fear of say phobia of English, I see when students come from different places, there is this phobia of English initially. So point of law, they can argue in Hindi also. There's no point. For example, the other day, I was arguing on 156(3). Now, the biggest problem was that the previous counsel, it was a non-cognizable offense, right? The This previous counsel had put it in 156(3). 156(3) में सिर्फ कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस ही हो सकता है, बिकॉज द फर्स्ट इज दैट यू ट्राई टू फाइल एन एफआईआर नहीं होती, देन यू राइट टू द एसपी, एंड देन द थर्ड स्टेप इज यू फाइल 156(3). 156(3) का नॉन कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस में कुछ नहीं, इसका 155(2) में है, wherein you have to take permission from the magistrate, your jurisdictional magistrate, right, and it is mandatory. तो अब क्या हुआ कि चूंकि पहले डाल चुका था और पुलिस ने इन्वेस्टिगेशन भी कर दिया, हालांकि पुलिस ने इन्वेस्टिगेशन, पुलिस डिड नॉट हैव अ मैंडेट टू इन्वेस्टिगेट इन 156(3), बट क्यूरियसली अब मेरे लिए क्या चैलेंज था, बिकॉज दिस क्लाइंट केम टू मी, तो मुझे तो ये था कि चलो मैं तो नहा बोलूं, बट देन आई वाज ऑनेस्ट विद द कोर्ट, तो आई टोल्ड द कोर्ट कि देयर इज नो कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस दैट इज मेड आउट। मैंने हिंदी में बोला, मैंने कहा सर इसमें कोई कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस हुआ नहीं है, तो कहते हैं ठीक है आप विड्रॉ कर लो। तो मैंने बोला सर सीआरपीसी में 156(3) विड्रॉ करने का कोई प्रोविजन नहीं है। I might have read somewhere, which is the case, because basically you're reporting a crime. It is not a civil litigation. So the judge understood. So then he kept it pending. He said, I'll keep it pending till the next date. Then I'll decide whether to take it directly under to section 200 private complaint or not. तो वो मेरे को इंग्लिश हिंदी का बात नहीं था, अगर मुझे पता है कि 156(3) इज फॉर कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस, वेदर आई नो इंग्लिश और हिंदी में, आई पुट अक्रॉस माई पॉइंट, तो हिंदी में। सो हैविंग दिस फियर ऑफ द लैंग्वेज डजंट हेल्प, बी वेरी कॉन्फिडेंट, बिकॉज जज ऑल्सो सिंस ही इज फ्रॉम इंडिया अंडरस्टैंड्स हिंदी। तो कई बार मैंने देखा है स्टार्ट पीपल बिकम वेरी नर्वस, तो ठीक है सर माय सीनियर इज नॉट देयर, और मैं सर इसमें आपको फैक्ट्स, आई कैन हेल्प यू आउट विद फैक्ट्स, इतना बोल के भी छोड़ सकते हैं। सो दैट इज व्हाट आई हैव रियलाइज्ड विद ओवर माय जर्नी इनटू दिस एजुकेशन सेक्टर एंड लीगल फील्ड।
Think so. Once again, I would like to say you are an inspiration for everyone out there, because
I
in
just try, yeah.
yes,
I just
because you, जो आपकी एडवाइस है, आपके सजेशंस है, दे आर सो हेल्पफुल, दे आर सो इंस्पायरिंग, दे आर इंस्पायरिंग फॉर दोज पीपल who change their career, right? एंड हु थिंक कि नहीं कैसे होगा, इतने सालों बाद अगर चेंज करेंगे तो कैसे होगा। इवन फॉर फ्रेशर्स, एज यू आर सेइंग, वी शुड कीप ऑन ट्राइंग, वी शुड नॉट back out, we should have faith in ourselves. So it's wonderful, just so being talking to you. So now just tell me, according to you, what is the significance of mentorship or guidance in this profession? Do you feel it is very much important, or do you feel you
very
can
important,
do without it?
very 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 important, you cannot do without it, but you have to make the maximum use of it. Now I want to name sort of a pass out from CLC. So he has started his own practice. Okay, he was working under some senior, right, and he only told me that he used to stay in office till 12 in the midnight trying to learn things, doing the drafting and all. So that phase of mentorship is very very important, and you cannot take it lightly. That phase of mentorship is basically you have to take it very 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 seriously, so that you learn the basic nuances, because there are a lot of things, there are a lot of operational things, which are very challenging at times. Now, for example, I'll just give you an example. The other day I filed order 11 application for interrogatories. तो मैंने एप्लीकेशन देने के मतलब बजाय सिर्फ इंट्रोगेटरीज दे दी है. I did not know that I had to file a application also. So the judge told me that इसके साथ आपको application, because why should I consider those interrogatories? I was not aware about it, right? So therefore, had I been working under some senior and I had seen him file those interrogatories, it would have helped me out, but it wasn't a big thing. So these are the small things that you only get to know when you're working with somebody, right? These applications, filing of these applications and all those procedural details that you need to know about. तो ये चीज आप किसी के साथ रह के ही कर सकते हैं, अकेले भी वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू sort of and there are certain set languages that also you have to sort of also master. Prima facie case नहीं है, and all those things, and imminent danger है, because that poses an imminent danger on you. So this you can only learn when you see somebody drafting or somebody dictating to you. People don't realize that even when they dictate, it really helps. So always make sure that ask your seniors कि sir मैं आप जो भी dictate करोगे मैं उसको type करूँगा. That's how you get to learn a lot. बहुत सारे वर्ड्स पता चलते हैं. When you write it down, or when you sort of take it down, then you realize कि there are a lot of things that you learn in that process, especially from a drafting perspective. So ये चीजें हैं that, and therefore mentorship is very 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 important.
So, according to you, which is the most challenging part of our profession, and which is the most rewarding part, according to you?
I think the most rewarding. I'll start with the most rewarding. The most rewarding part is when you are able to convince the judge about your point of view through your arguments. That's the most rewarding part. Even if you don't win a case, but that's very rewarding. So your day is made. I mean, right? And the most challenging is that sometimes, you have to put in this extra effort into knowing things. Now, for example, a 156.3 का है, so I make sure कि यार मैं 4-5 judgments पढ़ के जाऊँ so that I'm clear on it. Because see, there'll be opposite party counsel also. So you're up against that. So he might put in something which you are stuck up, and just because you're stuck up, and since you're arguing, you're up against say senior in the profession, so the judge might be inclined to accept his point of view. So that's a very very challenging aspect sometimes, to be to prepare yourself for the case. I think that's the most challenging part about this.
Absolutely, sir. I totally agree with you. So, with this, we are concluding our interview, and it was so good to hear you out. Whatever your suggestions, your advice, they would be so helpful to people out there who are confused, who are scared. लीगल प्रोफेशन में आते आते ही इंसान बहुत डरा हुआ होता है. Students are scared. Be it any age, everybody is apprehensive, hesitant होते हैं, hesitation होती है, क्या करें,
बिल्कुल सही
क्या
कह
ना
रहे हैं.
करें. तो you, according to me, you're an inspiration. So we would love to see, progress so much. We would love
Thank you, thank
seeing
you,
that
thank you.
progress. And
And
thank you
my
so much, sir.
last words would be
Yes.
never believe in yourself. I think the self faith is the key in succeeding in any profession, not just law. Because if you believe in yourself, then I don't think so you'll have any problems whatsoever in this profession. So with those words, I would like to conclude, my sort of thanks for giving me this opportunity of sharing my views about this profession.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, the pleasure is all ours. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
it was wonderful, so taking your interview and getting insights, your insights.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting.